Hi, this is Ashley, and I am here to talk about a topic that has really interested me, and it's really interesting to see how different people think about these two very integral parts of every single book. And it's just mind boggling how some people have completely different ideas. But I'm going to talk to you what I think about plot and story. So, plot and story to some people mean the same exact thing, but when I sit down and I talk about the plot and when I talk about story, they are two completely different things. The plot is the actual events that are happening. So, those are generally outward events, so things that are happening on the outside, somebody does something to somebody else, things like that. But they are also internal. So a character makes a certain revelation after something happens, or they learn something about themselves. There are internal plot events that happen, but they are all events. That's the real thing about plot. So they are events that build off of each other, different things that are happening throughout the novel that are shaping what we are reading. Then there's the other part, which is story, and I see a lot of people that conflate plot and story. And sometimes they go along very closely together because there really just isn't a whole lot of proper story, but they are not the same thing. So, story is pretty much the emotional journey and the takeaway that one gets from the novel. So pretty much you can break it down into these two very basic questions. Plot is what happens in this novel. Story is what is this novel actually about. And so you have these two things that work together, and when done really well, they're really seamless, and the events of the plot help build the story, and the story makes things inevitably evolve in the plot. So when done well, they are combined. And so that's why a lot of people talk about plot driven and character driven stories, and maybe I'll save that for another video. But when you talk about a plot driven novel, these are stories where the plot, the actual events that are happening, are the heart and soul of the story. They take precedence often over the story. So they are two very different things. So this is how you know that stories can be completely different from what their plots are. Because you can have the same exact plot in a novel and have two completely different stories based on the characters and how they react to everything. And on the same token, the story, you can have two very similar stories and two completely different plots. Yet, when you see these two different elements happening, you can get two very different feelings from the stories. And what the way that the story melds with the plot is how the story truly comes together and how they can be differentiated from others. And from what I found in the books that I've read, the ones that are successful at joining the plot and the story and making them both unique and then blended at the same time, generally those books, they usually feel more fulfilling because you have this progression that you're getting from the plot, but from the story you're also facing this complexity that you wouldn't necessarily if the story is actually shallow. And if the story is shallow and there just isn't much story, that means that the events in the plot are taking over, and that isn't necessarily a good thing. The more complex a novel is, the more important the story actually is, and what is trying to be conveyed and told and impressed upon the reader. And oftentimes I've found that writers, they often have an idea of what they want to be told in this story, but a really good story will transcend even what the writer intends, because a good, really great story that is implemented well with a solid plot will have people thinking about the story in more evolved ways. People will be trying to understand and dissect it rather than taking the story at face value. And there really isn't anything wrong with taking a story for face value, but they are two different things. And so I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about plot and story, and yeah, just give you my thoughts on how they are actually two very different things. So when you guys are reading, are you thinking about plot and story and how the two are coming together? I'm just curious. Why don't you guys let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.